We are creating this one-stop shop to help local newsrooms with, the digital issues that we all face because technology changes fast. So if you have a digital platform that you're publishing on, you kind of have to keep up with those changes, and that could be really tough. So we started just kind of talking about our vision for this thing, and we all agreed that, technology changes so quickly. Wouldn't it be great if there was just one place that you could go to get your questions answered, to get ideas, get information, and maybe even get help like actually doing something.
This is Small Press, Big Ideas, a podcast about the business of local news in the United States. I'm your host, Paul Gewertz. Small Press, Big Ideas is about the opportunities and challenges that local news publishers are facing for their businesses. I'll sit down and talk with journalists, entrepreneurs, nonprofit leaders, and more in the local news industry to find out what's working, what isn't, and how the local news ecosystem can innovate and flourish in the 21st century. Okay, today on the podcast, I am joined by Randy Picht and Leah Becerra. Randy is the executive director of the Reynolds Journalism Institute, and Leah, just had it pulled up, is the product director for the Reynolds Journalism Institute. And they reached out and they have launched, as of this recording, like today, have launched a new project called the News Media Help Desk. And I think some folks in the audience would be very interested in it. So Randy, Leah, thank you both for joining me. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having us, Paul.
Yeah. So this is kind of our first time meeting also. I don't know who wants to jump in first. We can kind of go back and forth. If you maybe each give me just a real brief background on, like, say, the Reynolds Journalism Institute and kind of your work there, just to kind of set the stage, and then we can dive into the other stuff.
Yeah, so RJI was opened in 2008 here at the University of Missouri at the Missouri School of Journalism. We'll call it Mizzou. And, it was set up by the Donald W. Reynolds Foundation to support journalism and basically be a home for research and for practical innovation that can help local news. So every day we come to work and we think about how can we do something that will help a journalist somewhere. So we do things. Our cornerstone project is a fellowship program where people from the industry can bring us ideas, and we provide some funding and some support to help them along. We have a national student competition. We have a lot of different things. So, but anyway, that's kind of what we do here at RJI.
That's great. And Leah, you're the product director, so I'll maybe ask you a little bit, kind of introduce the this News Media Help Desk. Anything else?
Yeah,
go for it. Yeah.
So I was brought on earlier this year and to kind of lead the building of this project of the creation of News Media Help Desk. And that's actually a project that RJI is doing with the Local Media Consortium. So they are our partners on this. And it's sort of like through our combined powers that we are creating this one-stop shop to help local newsrooms with, the digital issues that we all face because technology changes fast. So if you have a digital platform that you're publishing on, you kind of have to keep up with those changes, and that could be really tough. So we started just kind of talking about our vision for this thing, and we all agreed that, technology changes so quickly. Wouldn't it be great if there was just one place that you could go to get your questions answered, to get ideas, get information, and maybe even get help like actually doing something. So RJI, we kind of handle the content, the research, case studies, articles, and this cool tool that maybe we can talk more about called the Scorecard. And then LMC has sort of been operating this business called Digital On-Demand Services for a few years, actually, and they support local newsrooms with fractional services. So we have sort of scooped up, we call it DODS affectionately, and we sort of scooped up DODS underneath the News Media Help Desk umbrella so that we can really support newsrooms from many different angles. Being the product director on this project, that's making a website, that's creating processes so that we can do this regularly. So we just launched the website today, and we do have some content up there right now. But the hope is that we're publishing regularly, we're collecting toolkits, resources, information, and we'll even have a monthly newsletter that will come out next week.
That's excellent. And this is just like a free resource for journal. Like this podcast is aimed at local media in specific, but there's people from other news media organizations also out there. But it's just a free resource. You can just go look at it. Don't need anything else. Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, the help desk is free, and if a newsroom actually wants help getting something done with through DODS, there is a fee when it comes to that, but LMC has really done a great job sort of like pre-negotiating contracts, so it's transparent pricing and it's affordable.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead, Randy.
I'll just add, we were able to do this because the Knight Foundation gave us a $2.5 million grant for over 3 years to try to kind of build the runway for this. And so we're very lucky that they invested in this project. And kind of like Leah was saying, the way this got started was at a breakfast meeting where someone from Knight was Duck Liu, who is our program officer, asked me, well, what do you think local newsrooms need? And I said, well, they need help with digital technology. And he said, oh, yeah, okay, well, how would we do that? And I was like, well, I mean, my first response was, Wirecutter from the New York Times? Why don't we have a Wirecutter for journalism? And when people come and look at News Media Help Desk and look at the scorecard, I think they'll see some of that influence, if you will. But that's how this kind of all got started a couple of years ago.
When you say, it helps journalists and media companies, I guess, kind of stay up to date with technology. I mean, obviously the big one that comes to mind is AI. It changes every day. But I mean, is this across the board? If I say I'm a local media publisher and I've grown and I need like a CMS now and I have no idea what I'm looking for. There's just a random thing that came up. Like, are there different like categories like that they can go look at?
Yeah,
Across the board?
definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, we just got started, so we sort of had like a group of launch content, but we hope to sort of amass guides and case studies that cover more ground for sort of just those core utilities that you need to just function as a digital newsroom. But yes, we're also thinking about AI too.
Yeah, I knew it was going to come up. It comes up on every podcast lately. But I like the idea of the Wirecutter for journalism and, the kind of breakfast conversation you were talking about with was it Duck Liu? Is that who you said?
Yep, Duck Liu.
And
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah, we've gone back and forth on LinkedIn a few times. I've never met him face to face. I need to get on a longer call with him. What would you say? I'm assuming you spent a lot of time talking to newsrooms and stuff. What are the most pressing kind of needs that they're looking for right now? Like in terms of the resources that are being offered by the news media help desk. Are there any at the top of the list? Yeah.
I'll tell one quick. I mean, we're going to just, agree that AI is always now. Everybody wants to hear about AI. But when I was talking to this, as we were building this and giving people a heads up, I was talking to a group in Kansas City. And the idea of having tools and applications, a place where they could go and get this information. And I mentioned a few, like, if you want an email newsletter or, whatever. And when I got to philanthropy and donations, a lot of people, looked up from their dinner and said, what did he just say? So I would say that's something that is of interest right now. And we have some of that in the scorecard to help people evaluate that. So that was kind of just an immediate reaction to kind of what you're asking about. And I don't know, Leah, do you have an example or two?
Yeah, I mean, I think it ties in to the larger issue of just like, how does a newsroom stay sustainable right now? The business landscape is changing as technology is changing, and literally just how you pay for the creation of news is the number one issue that I think a lot of people are thinking about, that touches on AI, just because for, the past decade, it's been search or whatever. And with things like AI overview, where newsrooms are losing traffic from search. So that's just, one example of just how it plays out when you start talking about sustainability. So we are kind of keeping that in the back of our mind as we're thinking about what kind of content to publish and what type of stories that we want to tell. So one of the case studies that we published today was with Outlier Media, and it's talking about how they switched to Fundraise Up as their fundraising tool for their website for like getting donations and things like that. And it really gets into specifics about how, the tools that they came from. It talks a little bit about their tech stack, and it talks about, how there's been positive impact just on that sustainability issue as a result of switching over to this tool. And I should mention too, like we plan to case study a lot of different tools for fundraising. So we're not necessarily saying Fundraise Up is the greatest tool ever and everybody should use it. We're really trying to highlight like what the newsroom looks like, what their needs look like, and like why this tool aligns with their situation.
That's great. I'm not surprised. That's kind of one of the top areas of interest would be the fundraising. 2 or 3 times on this podcast in the last, month or two, I've had people say something similar, like, there's all this grant money out there, but we can't afford a grant writer, or we don't know how to write, things like along those lines also. So I just talking to folks on here, I just kind of pick up on like kind of these trends and everything coming up. You both piqued my interest with the scorecard. Is it the tool scorecard? I'm just looking at the website here. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Could you tell me about that? Because now I have to know after you've brought it up.
Yeah.
And it's Leah's creation. So
Nice.
Right. It underwent just a change as we sort of thought about the issue of tools and, who do you give, what third-party company do you give your money to so that you actually get something that helps you? And initially it was, an article. And then it sort of evolved into, well, wouldn't it be more useful if you could actually compare tools? And then like Randy said, it really took on much more of the sort of like wire cutter style where you could sift through tools that did similar tasks and then you can compare them. So we've published our initial batch of tools, and when we were thinking about how to put all of this together, we thought a lot about the type of tools that would go in. Like it would be impossible to put every single digital tool that a newsroom could possibly use in there. So we're going to focus on tools that relate to the core of journalism and running a news business right now. They fit into 4 categories, and I'm going to go to it on my screen so I don't misspeak as I'm talking about it. But
No problem.
there are 4 main categories within the scorecard. So we've got tools that are types of utilities, tools that help with optimization, tools that help with audience, and tools that help with revenue. So within that, we're going to have many smaller categories. So for example, optimization could be a type of tool that helps you to actually produce your content on the website. So within that, we have a batch of tools that includes things like Noda, which is a tool that can literally help you, write headlines, more specifically SEO headlines, can help you write summaries and even help you quickly summarize your text, in a small newsroom where you have reporters who are writing anywhere from 4 to 10 stories a day. It's very difficult to wrap your head around now writing a good headline for that story, now writing a good summary for that story, and also thinking about like keywords. So a tool like Noda can kind of free up the reporter to do what they do best and actually focus on the reporting and the writing. And the tool just helps optimize the content that they are producing. And obviously, I think in a lot of cases, newsrooms aren't just, trusting. In this case, it is an AI-based tool with 100% because we are journalists and we like to fact check and we like to edit things and make sure they're correct. So more than likely, they're using Noda to get kind of like the starting point, and then they're doing the tweak and the editing before they're publishing. It's just a tool that helps sort of optimize the process of publishing news. And we've got 3 other categories other than content optimization. We also have fundraising tools, and we've got transcription tools, and then we have analytics tools. But we're going to keep adding batches as we go.
And the cool thing about the scorecard is you can look at one. So it's like Noda. Okay, so now people could go there and look at Noda. They could just click on Noda and see a list of the different, how it, the features and all the information you need to know. And if you think you've heard 3 names, you can put all 3 up on the screen and compare them. And I think that's going to be a very popular feature. This is sort of a cross between Wirecutter and Consumer Report, that we grew up with the big charts and the circles and stuff like that.
Yeah, but it also kind of came from a place of, before I came to RJI, I was working for the Boston Globe, and I was their senior digital editor. I was running their homepage team, and I was working pretty closely with the product team at the company. So I was often, deeply invested in the process of picking tools. So I thought about just that experience in the creation of the scorecard. And what we hope to do is unearth information that sometimes you can only get by filling out a company's form to talk to them, which is a whole process, which results in marketing emails. And sometimes you don't even get all your answers until you've done like a demo. And then, pricing is also not super transparent in a lot of places. So we were hoping to sort of unearth a lot of information that could be compared across tools. And the idea is that hopefully we can get newsrooms to a point where they can actually get closer to picking the tool, to actually using the tool much sooner and faster, and feel really good that tool actually aligns with their needs.
Yeah, I was just browsing through on the tool. I really like the simplicity of how it's set up. Like, I won't say company or a tool name, but it's like, tool is open source, X. Integrates with Zapier, X. API access, checkmark. It's just so it's quick to the point, not taking up too much of their time. You talked about how you were deep in the weeds of kind of picking these tools and everything. Leah, could you talk a little bit about that? Forgive me if you kind of covered it a bit already, but is there like a vetting process to make, because, people can spin up weird AI
Right.
sites these days that aren't even real or anything like that. And I recognize some of these companies, but how did you go into like finding just a lot of time digging through, finding these tools, vetting them, and going through all this stuff? And once again, forgive me if you already went over that, but if you could dig into that a little more, I'd like to hear it.
Yeah, sure. So it's really hard. Like, if you think about how you might start that process, just starting completely from scratch, sometimes people would start with like a Google search, and they would come up with a bunch of names. And the problem that you encounter a lot of times is you get a bunch of possibilities, a bunch of tools, but you don't necessarily know if newsrooms are using them. Like, you don't know about the use case that they apply to. So we very intentionally are only including tools in the scorecard that we know for a fact newsrooms are using. So sometimes it's a little bit of word of mouth, sometimes it's personal experience. And so we need to know, first of all, that a newsroom is in fact using this tool and it's working well before we will even consider including it in the scorecard. So just by kind of putting those constraints on, when you start with that Google search idea, like, you go from having maybe 10 in a spreadsheet down to like 4. And then the other things that are necessary for inclusion is we have the same questions that we're asking every single tool. So if we run into a situation where we can't get pricing, we're just not going to include the tool.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's one of the first things on here. Lowest monthly cost, free, lowest monthly cost, $59. It's nice to just see that.
Right. And it's not like going to a grocery store and it being a price tag. I think most news publishers kind of know that the prices may change depending on their situation or their traffic or whatever. But it's good to have sort of a ballpark in mind, at least.
Yeah. And I mean, I run a business where I work with publishers, and like you said it really well. A small hyper-local publication has different needs than like a city regional or something along those lines. So things kind of fluctuate from there. And yeah, it's also very helpful that you did all this work. Just in my own business, in my own life, I was nodding vigorously there. When you try looking at a tool, and then they also get into like weird industry jargon you might not understand, like on the tool. I'm like, I'm not sure what this is trying to tell me. So it's good. How long did it take you to put this together? And could you talk also about the timeline of the whole project? Sorry.
Yeah. So when did I start, Randy? Was it like in March or something like that?
The March.
Right. So it's for just the tools that you're seeing in there. I don't think we started, researching those tools right away in March. But I think probably by like May, we had sort of identified groups of tools that we wanted to do. So from roughly May to like last week, we were still finalizing details for some of these tools. So it takes a while. And I think sometimes too, you're right about jargon. We have a question in the scorecard about like whether or not you can create workspaces. It's this idea that, usually applies to bigger companies, but like if you have teams and you want those teams to have like their personal private silos, that's kind of what workspaces will do for you. But if you go to a lot of tools websites, they don't necessarily use that term, or they use like a phrase that loosely sounds similar. So a lot of times it's just like reaching out to the company to clarify, like, do you actually do this? Or what all is involved in making this type of thing happen? So it's a lot of, finding the information, clarifying the information. And it takes quite a bit of time.
Yeah, and that's one thing not to just gloss over is that, so we're getting information from the company's website, but, we're often calling the companies to ask specific questions when the information is not there or when it is jargon and we don't understand it. So sometimes it can take a little bit more time than others,
Right.
depending on what's there. And the other thing I'll say about the scorecard is, a number of the questions are the same for every single tool or application, but then there's some unique questions based on what that category is doing. Like Leah mentioned, workspaces. So some of the tools are not going to need to know, or they're not going to be involved in that. So we don't ask that question. So you get the benefit of the basic information for everybody, but then there's that customization aspect that really gets into the heart of the matter for why you're using the tool. We want to ask these 3 questions that are really going to make a difference in terms of whether you like it or not.
Right. So, for instance, for our transcription tools that we launched with, they have category-specific questions about just the core feature of transcribing audio into text. So, some of the things that are important to journalists are things like, can it transcribe in different languages? Can it identify when there are multiple speakers? And can you edit the transcript after the fact? But those questions wouldn't necessarily apply to like a content production tool or an analytics tool. So we don't include those when you pull up a different category.
I usually would ask, like on a podcast like this, what the reception has been like, but you literally launched today. Do you have any insight? Can you see any traffic or anything like that? Or was there any kind of feedback going into the product launching and everything like that you've gotten from newsrooms or anything?
Well, I think Randy, myself, our partners at the LMC, like we've all attended conferences and we've been talking about this project a lot. And just in having those one-on-one conversations, or sometimes, you have a situation where you're at a table of people and everybody's working in the news industry. When you start talking about, the pain points that we're trying to address, people are like, oh, yeah, that would be really helpful. I'm so glad you're making that. So we got a lot of verbal head bobbing and just positive reception to the idea. We started a teaser launch campaign about a week ago, and we got a lot of positive reception from that too. And I'll just say, like, we're also launching a monthly newsletter, so we're creating an email list, and it's growing pretty quickly. So from my perspective, that's really positive, and I think it shows that people understand, what we're trying to do here, and they think that it'll be helpful. So they're signing up to hear from us, which is good.
Yeah, that's a positive sign. Definitely. I was going to ask, these are mostly tools that you can integrate into the newsroom. I was going to ask if there's services, but then I kind of remembered you have the partnership with LMC and the digital. I'm guessing the Dodds kind of covers that aspect of things, which anybody interested in that, I had Fran Wills from LMC on here a while back. So I'll link to that in the show notes here also.
Okay.
If anybody's more interested, because it's kind of related, a tool versus a service done for you or do it yourself kind of deal.
Yeah, the other thing I would say in terms of that, so Dodds has been around for a little while. So really the News Media Help Desk is built on, kind of broadening a couple things that have been working. So LMC has this digital on-demand services. They've successfully worked with news organizations to do various kinds of things. We have a program for 7 years to send students into community newspapers to help them do some digital application or learn how to create an email newsletter. It's for 1 week they go in, and we've had a lot of success with that, with just that communication of here's some things you need to think about and here's how you can do it and that kind of stuff. And so we feel like the News Media Help Desk is going to just take that concept and really broaden it and bring it into and do even more with it. So we're optimistic.
Yeah, it's a really, really cool project, and thank you for reaching out. I mean, I had seen this floating around, but I had not done any deep dives on it. So this is excellent. You may have mentioned this early on. Also, I'm just kind of going after any threads that come up in my own mind. What's you said you're going to be doing a newsletter and updating, content on here. What's kind of the frequency and like the time outlook on that, Leah? Because you said this is a grant funded thing. I don't know if it's a limited run or if there'll be more funding that could potentially come in later, but like what frequency you're looking to put stuff out and like for how long and everything like that. Yeah.
Well, we did our due diligence and we budgeted many varying things. So the clip that we're hoping to publish on at a very, very minimum basis is we want to put at least 2 new articles a week out. Because the scorecard takes such a long time to actually get all the information, it's a little bit more difficult for me to say how quickly that will update. But I hope that as we, add some more student staffers to help us with the research angle of all of this, that it could be done a little bit more quickly. But honestly, I think that, we are treating this as a little bit of a sustainable business operation ourselves. And we're wanting to do things like bring on sponsors to sponsor our newsletter. And we have ad spots on the website. So if brands wanted to actually advertise with us, they could, and we would put that money toward basically continuing to create the content that's really helpful for people. So we can promise at least 2 news stories a week. That volume may go up, who knows? But that's just sort of at a bare minimum right now based on the grant that we got.
Yeah, and the grant is for 3 years, and we are basically we're about 3 months short of halfway point in terms of the grant. So I think, we have another year and a half plus to kind of experiment with some sustainability options, create more content, and kind of just keep seeing where this goes. The other thing about it, I think, is that, this is really basically in the wheelhouse of both of these organizations. So RJI was established to help journalism. And, I guess we're taking it a little literally, which is not easy to say. We're making a help desk, right? How literal can you get? And Local Media Consortium, their history, they were founded for the same reason, is to help the local news ecosystem. So we're hoping to get a strong start in this, and then kind of see what we can do after the grant is over.
And we also, I should specify, when I say 2 new pieces of content, I mean original content. But as a part of our launch offering, there are 2 stories that, we did not originally write, but we have republished them. We hope to, create more partnerships where we can do that with other journalism support organizations if they are comfortable with us posting their content on our website, just so we can live in one place. We're also collecting external links that we just think are fantastic and are really helpful. So on the Learning Center area of the website, there's actually like a little list of toolkits and like resources for journalists. And we'd like to get a little bit better over time at collecting those things. It's a little unclear about what a collection like that will look like, because you have to keep in mind that, as we talked about at the beginning, technology changes. So a toolkit that's great today might not be great 2 years from now. So we want to be thinking very critically about like the types of resources that we're including and making sure that they're really meeting the moment.
That's great. Very cool. Thank you. I have kind of piqued most of my interest that I had coming into this, but I'm curious, what have I missed? Is there anything glaring that I haven't asked you or about the project or anything that I overlooked?
No, I don't think so. I mean,
Right.
somebody said something about meeting, but anyway, the part of this is we're hoping to meet people where they are, right? So a lot of the information around technology, people don't feel like, they're not confident, they don't have time, they've gotten burned, so we're like the Statue of Liberty, bring us your burned and you're unconfident. And I mean, because we want people, if you feel comfortable figuring out a email newsletter platform and you want to read our scorecard and it helps you make a decision and you can take the ball and run with it, then just go. If you are not sure about it and you want some help, we have the fractional services part. Eventually we're going to have more hands-on help from student workers who can, help fill in that gap in terms of, I don't have time, I don't have the confidence. But overall, we don't want to be sending people away like, sorry, we can't help you. We want to cover the waterfront in terms of helping everybody.
Also, I think we want to make sure that we're having a conversation with people who are working at newsrooms. It's really easy when you're stepped outside of a newsroom to be like, oh, people just need to do X, Y, Z, and that will fix everything. But, it's not realistic. And journalism is not one size fits all. Sustainability is not one size fits all. So we want to hear from people who are visiting our website. We want to hear from people who have problems, hear about what they're facing, hear the questions that they have, and really be, very responsive to what we're hearing. We're not, sitting on a balcony view and staying up here. Like we want to be closer to the ground floor and really be talking to people so that we're not making assumptions and we're really addressing real needs.
Great. That's the correct mentality to go into it if you want to help folks. So I'll link to the Reynolds Journalism Institute and the News Media Help Desk. What else do you want me to promote or link to in the show notes, or where can people find you online? Anything like that?
Well, we're on, if folks want to follow us on social media, we launched a LinkedIn page. We launched a Blue Sky account and we launched an Instagram. We are creating sort of like original Instagram versions of our case studies, for folks who maybe don't want to read the entire case study or they're more of an Instagram type person. We're sort of creating Instagram first approach to some of our stories. And I think the newsletter is just a fantastic way for people to stay in touch with us. The goal of the newsletter was to sort of give a little bit of like a conference vibe. That feeling when you go to a really good journalism conference and you like walk away with this glow because you have like new ideas, you've met new people, you have sort of like sparked interest in something that you'd like to try when you get back to the newsroom. Well, I love that feeling. So we were hoping to, in the creation of a monthly newsletter, attempt to give people that feeling like once a month with no travel fees associated with it and just go straight to your inbox.
I'll have links to all that stuff in the show notes. So if anybody's listening, you can just scroll down, click on it.
Yep, great.
And Randy, Leah, thanks for joining me. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
This is great. And
right.
if you have any updates in the future, we can always have you on again as well. Cool.
All right.
Have a good day.
See ya.
Thank you for listening to Small Press Big Ideas. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you'd like to help the show, the best thing you can do is to tell a friend or colleague and just take a few minutes to leave a rating and a review on whatever platform you're listening to right now. It only takes a minute out of your day, but it really does help the podcast grow and reach more ears. Check back for new episodes every Monday.